Hello! Chaotic Shmoo here with another Roll20 tutorial. This week you're going to learn about chat and roll commands, which lead up to the basics of macros. By the end of this tutorial, I hope that you're going to be able to make your own macros utilizing the different command combinations that I'll be showing you here today. These macros are quite important if you want to have a smoother game and less system mechanics being run during the pausings and downtimes, allowing you to have less downtime. So to start off, we're going to do your basic chat commands, your general chat commands. Let me clear the chat here real quick from my testing phases before. And the chat commands, basic ones, we have whisper, which is /W, send private messages to whoever players are in the game, /EM or me, either one, to give a description of what your character's doing or a description, and then /OOC, which is out of game character. So it's allowing you to not break the immersion of your role-playing aspect and make a comment about a game. So /whisper, we'll do /whisper. Let me test these out for you guys. We do /whisper space the player's name. Now I'll do CH, and let me pop this up here real fast because that's not supposed to be that low. But let me delete that again. Now CH, and notice a name pops up. Now right now I'm playing as the character Emiko. Let me delete that. You can see this here. This is Emiko, because down here you can change it. If you have multiple characters and whatnot, you can change it to who you're playing as. So you can do /whisper, and I'm Emiko right now, and I'm going to send a whisper to Chaotic Shmoo or the GM. I can either type in CH and chaotic will come up, which is short for Chaotic Shmoo, or I can type GM. Hit enter or hit space if you know it's spelled right, and you have the full spelling out, and then your message. Hey, how are you? Whatever message you want. And then they can reply back. Let me change it back here as if I was another player, and I can do /whisper, start typing it, Emiko, I'm good. So now granted this says to GM, but that's because I'm the only player in here and I'm just responding back as another player. It's still, I'm just responding to myself, so it's gonna say that. But if it was, if Emiko was a real person in the game, it would say to Emiko, not to GM. So it allows you to whisper to each other. The next one, the /EM or /me, does a descriptive of your character. And so /EM, it's an emote basically, and I can do walks into the tavern and orders an ale. Almost how it appears. So if I just type /ME now, and I do the same thing, walks into the tavern and orders an ale, same thing. So they essentially do the same thing. It's an emote describing what your character's doing or whatnot. You could do Emiko walks up to the goblin and chops its head off. Whatever. So then the last one is the OOC, which is the out of game. And you can go, hey, remember, ooh, I can't type. Remember that movie last night? It was awesome. Now that's just in chat on its own while everybody else is still doing their thing. That people can ignore it, people can respond to it. But one thing to note, that it was awesome. Notice how I'm not doing the OOC, the /OOC. Notice how when I did /OOC, it took my player name. It didn't take my character name. I'm now right now represented as Emiko as a character. I typed in yeah, it was awesome. Emiko appears. I typed in the OOC, the /OOC, excuse me, and my player name appeared, indicating that I am talking as my player, not as the character. I'm talking as real life myself, not as a character. It allows for that separation and keep that immersion feeling involved. So next, those are the basic commands, but next we're going to talk about the dice commands, which will lead up to the Game Master only commands, of where some of those are still chat commands to more descriptive stuff, and then there's one that involves rolling. So before we get into that, we can cover it all at once. We're going to get into the actual dice rolling itself. So the dice rolling itself, if you've watched my previous tutorials, you know that we've done these before. We've done some of these before. Not all of them. But we're going to go into more details about them now and what I was doing previously. And that is, you have /roll or /r, like I have listed right here. You then do however many number of dice you want to roll, which we'll do 1. You hit the D for dice, and then you do what sided die you're going to roll. In this case, we're going to roll a 20-sided die, standard for your D20 system in D&D and Pathfinder. And then you add a plus. Now you don't have to. I could delete that plus, hit enter. It rolls a 1d20. I hit up on the keyboard. It pops back up. I can do a +5. And it'll do whatever number lands on the d20 +5, giving me an 8. Quite a low roll. That is your standard basic rolling of the die. You can do /r 4d6. It'll roll 4d6. Add them all together. Very straightforward. However many dice you want to roll, whatever sided dice you want to use to roll your dice, then roll it. I mean, you could even do /roll 1d20 plus 2d10. It'll add them all up together. You can combine them however you want. The next added feature to this, though, is instead of adding a modifier of the plus and then a number, that number is the modifier, whatever is your strength check, your intelligence, a skill, whatever it may be, we're going to do a D and then a number. This is the drop and keep method. The D is for dropping, the K is for keeping. So we'll do your standard ability score rolling for Dungeons and Dragons, at least 3.5. We're going to do 4d6 d1. That d1 says, okay, roll 4 6-sided dice, but drop the lowest number and ignore it. And then add the other 3 up. So it did, that is a very good roll. It did 6 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5, but if you notice, that 4 is grayed out. And then it adds up the 6, 5, and 5. It ignores that 4. Same method works with the K for keep. Only this keeps the highest numbers rolled. So if I did that same thing, 4d6 K1 instead of a D1, we do K1, it will drop the lowest 3 and keep the highest 1 because there's only 4 dice in this case. So it'll keep that one high number and it'll drop all the other 3. If you notice here, we have 5, 6, 3, 6. We have 2 6s. Well, it went, I don't care about one of those 6s. We're going to get rid of it either way because we only need one number. If I reversed this and I went 3 instead of a 1 after the K, it will do the exact same thing as that 4d6d1. It's just doing it in reverse. It's keeping the 3 highest, dropping the 1 lowest, because you only have 4 dice. You could change that to 40 d6 k3, which would be keeping the top 3 highest out of 40 6-sided dice. Notice it was 666. Hope you're not religious. So it's very nice for rolling ability stats for like Dungeons & Dragons, like I said. Or whatever reason you want to use it for. But that's the drop and keep method. Or keep and drop method, however you want to call it. I don't care. I don't get technical on that stuff. But the next method that you can use, let's say you're rolling some die for your strength damage. Now in D&D, you add your strength modifier if you're doing single-handed melee attack. Just the number itself. Well, if you're doing two-handed, you get 1.5 times your strength modifier. So instead of trying to get it all complicated and whatnot of how do I figure this out, or you know, let's say you have a 5 and you need to add 1.5 times that, and it's 2.5. Well, we round up? Do we round down? What do we do? Well, we have 3 different options to tell whether or not we're going to round up or round down. We have floor, seal, and round. Floor, it drops it to the lowest whole number. Seal drops it, brings it up to the highest whole number, and round puts it to the closest. So it could be, for floor, it could be 5.7, it'll still be 5. It could be 5.2, it'd still be 5. For seal, it'll be 5.2, it'll be 6. 5.7, it'll be 6. Rounding, 5.7 will be 6, 5.2 would be 5. So we'll do /r floor here, parentheses, we'll say 5 times 1.5, close the parentheses, and we'll do a plus, we'll just leave it at that. 7. We'll pop this up again, only instead of floor, I'm going to delete floor, and I'm going to put sill. 8. Now here's the tricker. I'm actually not sure what would happen with this case, because it's a 0.5. 8. If I do it again, 8. So 0.5 rounds up in this case. Now if I change this 0.5, we're just going to do 0.4 for rounding. 7. So if you need rounding features, you have those 3 options right there to be able to round. Up, down, to straight solid numbers, no matter what the decimal point is, or, hey, check what decimal point that is and round accordingly. But the other commands. Now other commands, these get really, really into macros. These are the ones that you really use hardcore into macros. The question mark, squiggly bracket, modifier, 0, close squiggly bracket, with a solid line between the modifier and 0. This is a really cool feature if you ever make rolls and you need to constantly be changing the modifier. So if I go /r 1d20 plus question mark squiggly bracket. Now that modifier, that word modifier, that can be whatever you want. So if we take this here, whoops, we take this here, and we go attack bonus. The solid line. And we'll do 5, because that number can also be whatever you want it to be. We could even say enter attack bonus here. Now, my enter attack bonus here was a bit long for the box, but you can put whatever you want in. It's just showing you what you can do. And we'll just put 4, and it rolls 1d20 plus 4. So that modifier allows you to enter in a number every single time. It's really nice. Really nice system to utilize if you're doing breath weapons, let's say. How many targets? That's more advanced macro systems that involves targets. But that's how you can set it up so that every time you have to roll, you enter in your modifiers. Now, if your modifier never changes, you're probably not going to want to use this command. But it's a nice feature to have otherwise. A nice additional feature, which I think I have to clear this. I do. Additional feature here, if I open up the turn order here, is the ampersand tracker. Now, just like any other roll, we got your standard /R 1d20. We're going to do plus, we'll do 5, doesn't matter. And we're going to do space, we're going to add the ampersand tracker. Now before I hit enter, there's something you have to know with the ampersand tracker. You have to have a token selected. It does not work without it. Because it needs to know what it's calling, what it's grabbing from, because that tracker puts it in the turn order. So now that I have Emiko selected, I'm going to hit enter. I get a 7. She pops up in the turn order. There you go. You just put your initiative into the turn order. The DM doesn't have to go in here and add everybody by manually, you know, going, oh, look, an ogre. Oh, look, Tim's playing. You know, and then go in here and go, he's got a 12, and he's got a 2. Sorry, Tim. And you got your, you know, instead of having to do that by hand every single time, you can select your monster, type it in, and it pops into the return order. Very effective, very efficient, and very smooth for setting up your combat. And it works. And then you can go in here and, you know, descending. Okay, ogre goes first, then goblin, then Emiko, and Tim's always last. So very nice for setting up your combat. After that, we have some of the more complicated stuff. I'll give you quick details of what they do. I know in past tutorial I explained the character journals and abilities and attributes. If you don't know what those are, go back and watch that video because it's not going to make much sense to you in this next stuff I talk about. So getting in depth of the abilities that are for mostly used in macros, is you have the @ symbol, the percentage symbol, and the hashtag. The @ symbol calls an attribute in a journal. Now, if you use the attribute in a journal itself, like I showed before, then you just call it straight from the journal itself. You don't have to put selected or this person's name, because selected can change to target. It can change to a player's actual name. You know, saying, hey, go to this journal, this specific journal named Emiko, and look for weapon 1 attack. And it'll take it from the attributes. %sign does the same thing, except for it calls abilities. So it would call either attack or attack damage instead of the zeros. Same thing with the ampersand of target, only instead of taking the character I have selected, it takes the character that I'm targeting, which means I would select him and then click on the goblin, and it would take the attributes of the goblin. So if that said target AC, it would take his AC and add it to the command. And then the same thing for attributes and abilities, same thing. @ symbol is for attributes, percentage is for abilities. Now you gotta remember, abilities are macros in their own sense. They're just specifically on the player's journal, they're not global. And then finally, we have your hashtag, which the hashtag is used to call another macro. So you could have macros nested inside of other macros, like I do right here for this attack macro, of which I'll show you how it works in just a second here. But at the end here, in order to get the damage of the attack, I have a hashtag damage, which calls this other macro I have in here, which is also down here in the bottom. I can hold shift and click it and it'll open it up. So whenever the attack macro calls the damage macro with the hashtag name of that macro, which is damage in this case, it will do the damage macro, whatever it says. Kind of cool. You know, you can nest a macro inside of a macro inside of a macro however many times you want, make it as complicated as you want. for whatever purposes you need it for. But if you notice here, I have, let me open up Imoko's journal here and go to attributes. If you notice, on this macro of attack, I have the emote. So it puts Imoko describing what she's doing. Attacks, little descriptive words in here, attacks with. Then I have an @ symbol and squiggly brackets. And I have this selected. So as long as I have Imoko selected, I could have anyone selected. As long as they have these abilities and attributes in their journal, it will work. So it takes the selected, which is Imoko, and it looks for weapon 1 name, which weapon 1 name is right here. And it inserts this block, which is halberd, in there. And then it goes rolling A, and then we have the percentage sign. So now it's going to take the ability of who's ever selected, which I have attack right here. It looks for attack. It finds attack in the abilities. It puts this equation in there and this calculation. Well, then it looks inside this calculation and goes, okay, I got to roll a 1d20, and I have to add back over to the ability attributes the weapon 1 attack, which is right here. Okay, so it's a 5. So I have to put a 5 in there plus the d20 for that ability. And then it keeps going. On hit versus the AC. But now it switches to the target. And it does the same thing. It goes, oh, okay, the @ symbol, so it's attributes. And it goes, in this character, they have an attribute set up. Now I have it set up just as bar 1 because it represents it's a goblin here. You could do AC. There's a whole nother reason which I want to do a tutorial in the future about why I have it set up this way. It's linking your journals and your tokens together. I'm going to do another journal or tutorial explaining in more depth of what I've already previously explained on how this is set up this way. But for right now, all you need to know is that this token represents this goblin. Right here. It represents the journal. And so he calls, I don't have much in this one, but the one I do have that's important is he calls the AC. See, the calls the attribute of the target, and he calls the AC. And then we get to the rolling the extra macro right here for damage. So if I close that, and let's go to the chat here again so we can see it pop up. I'm going to go down here, I'm going to select Imoko, because it's set up to be for selections. And if I click the attack macro down here in my macro bar, it comes up with a choose a target. Well, okay, let me choose a target. Now I could choose myself and it would choose myself. Only one problem, that target AC command that's in the macro, Imoko doesn't have an AC set up, so it won't work. It'll do everything else but that. So I'm going to target the goblin. Now you notice a nice fancy looking way instead of this junk here. A nice polished looking way here. Where Imoko attacks with a halberd, rolling a 22 to hit versus an AC of 15, dealing 7 slashing damage if successful. Now, any person looking at this would go, okay, somebody typed that in, and then they did what is a square bracket, a double square bracket. Let me just show you real fast here. Close it with a double square bracket also. That is math inside the chat. It does the math. It's only for numbers. And it does the math inside of the text. Which is what these 7 and 22 are. You mouse over it, it explains what the rolls are. You make sure they're right. So they'll think, they typed it all out and okay, they had the math in the chat, right there, and everything else is numbered. But halberd, 15, and slashing are all from Imoko's attributes on her character sheet, on her journal. So it's really cool. You can make it so, all this stuff can change depending on the weapons you're using and all the modifiers, and making, really polished looking effect when you attack. It just looks really nice compared to, again, this stuff where it's just a random dice roll, which is fine. If that's what you want to do, then do it. But that's how you make a macro. That's all there is to it. And then you just got to combine all this stuff and any other things you find, because Roll20 has a lot. of different types of commands as they are constantly growing and expanding and adding more stuff. If you wanted to get even more complicated, you could get into the mentor side of it, which is a paid monthly subscription of $10 a month, and you can add API scripts that are all written in, JavaScript, and then those connect to this tabletop here, and then they have their own commands, and then it gets even more complicated and more twisted, and there's a lot. So for right now, to not get you overwhelmed, we'll stick to this. But that's the essentials of how to make a macro starting off. Take a look at the wiki for more options and whatnot on your macros. You can go to the macro section of Rolling Dice. A lot of this I already covered. A lot of it has a little bit more details on stuff, different kinds of options, different kinds of other stuff. But for the most part, it's been covered. You got the ampersand tracker. And so, go through the wiki and stuff like that, and you can find all different kinds, even the community forums. You can find all different kinds of really nice macro combinations and things you might not have thought of. One last thing that we're going to touch on, we're going to go back, because I almost forgot about it, is the Game Master only commands. I said we'd come back to it, so now we are. And the Game Master only commands are kind of nice because you can do this /desc, and you can do a description of the environment, of the world, or whatever you want to describe. The ogre stretches after, a long nap. And you can describe the environment and everything through text if you don't want to verbally describe it, or if the text is a more powerful way of doing it. Whatever works. And then you could do, you describe the ogre's getting up from his nap. Well, now you want the ogre to talk. So you do as/as. And then you do the name of whatever NPC you want to use. You don't have to have a player journal for it or anything like that. You just type in whatever name you want to use. If you want to use two names, let me go back here. You put it in quotes. Oops. My bad. It'd be Ogre Mage. Dyslexia kicked in again. Ogre Mage in quotes. Now he's an Ogre Mage. He just happened to magically become an Ogre Mage. What you want. If anybody knows that quote, you guys are amazing. Now the Ogre Mage is speaking instead of Emiko or whoever I have selected for my own uses. Kind of nice, right? You can have your NPCs talking. If you can't do 20 million different voices because you have 20 million different NPCs, if you have that many NPCs in the game, you are a god among role-playing gamers. You can have them talk. Then you can also have them describe what they're doing. Just description, just like an emote of your character, you can also have them, the NPCs have emotes. And it's EMAS. And then, again, in quotes if it's two words for their name, not in quotes if it's just a single word. But we're going to stick with the Ogre Mage. If I can type, wow. Slams his greatsword into the ground. Now it does an emote, just like you did before. Just like we did in the macro right here with Emiko. Nice. So lastly, like I said, I didn't want to touch this until you learned the other rolling stuff, is a GM role. Now /GM role is for the GM only, like I've been saying, for this part, and it doesn't show to anybody. The GM role is basically whispering to himself his roles. Now just for the sake of it, I'm just going to roll 1d20. Notice the color difference between the GM role and the player roles. The GM role has this lighter color that only they see. So if you want to make secret rolls as a game master, use /GM role. That sums it up. Those are the nice commands that I've given to you. Take them, use them, and grow and make amazing macros. If you think of any cool macros, let me know. Give me descriptions in the chat, in the comments below and whatnot, and let me know what you've created and whatnot. I love seeing more different types of variations of macros. I'm constantly updating and changing my macros, and it's nice to see what other people do, because for all I know, you're doing something that I didn't even think of, and that'd be awesome. Be like, hey, I can use that, and here, you can use this and whatnot, So leave a comment below about what macros you came up with, or you want to use, or you want to try. Any questions about the macros and whatnot, again, leave comments below. Tweet me at @chaoticshmoo if you have any other questions or whatnot also. But please share this and like it and subscribe for more awesomeness. Thank you all for watching. I'm cubicApocalypse, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.